Hey everyone, this is Lori Eberly. Welcome back to another episode of Radius Cafe. Today, I'm happy to introduce you to Lauren Anderson. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And what's really fun about this interview is that you and I met via LinkedIn. And sometimes LinkedIn can feel rather transactional, and it can be about getting one more connection, or potentially you can lead me to one more business contact. And I don't remember the specifics about how we connected, but we've stayed in touch, and I feel like it's moved into the relationship category, and it's not just some stuffy old thing on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, I love it. It's a great place to meet people. It's the new, networking space, digital networking space. So I'm super glad that we met, and it's been a wonderful time so far, and I'm sure that the future will be even greater.
And Lauren, one of the many things that stands out about you, and we'll get to some of the others, is that you had your master's in HR by the time you were 22. And most 20-somethings are not totally clear about what they're going to want to be doing, and certainly have not gotten a master's by that age. How did you have the clarity that that was the work that you wanted to be doing, and why?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit of an overachiever. At 22, I was done with school. So I actually graduated high school at about 17, turning 18. I went into college, and so I started at a junior college in Southern Indiana. And it was there where I really started to kind of hone my leadership skills. And I became, a leader of some campus organizations and some initiatives there. And so, hadn't even thought that I was going to make it to college because, my last 2 years of high school were better than the first 2 years. I was raised in the Bronx, and I had a lot of distractions growing up. So, with that aside, when I got to college, I said, well, I really got to, buckle down and, do the best that I can in academia. By about 19, my mom passed from cancer, and that was a life-changing experience for me. And so from there, I knew that I had to really take my life by the reins, right? Because no one else would do it for me. And so I just really, stuck my head in the books. I didn't have a traditional college experience with a lot of playtime and a lot of, partying. I did a little party, but it wasn't a lot, and so I was just very focused. And I ended up, getting on the dean's list and graduating with honors. And then I moved forward to the 4-year college, which was in another part of Indiana, Southern Indiana, and did the same thing there, really focused in on the work. And so after that, I was really sick and tired of Indiana. In this small, kind of town, even though, it served me well. I wanted to go back to big city living, having grown up in the Bronx. And so I went to Chicago and went to grad school there and started living on Michigan Avenue. And I studied human resource management. And so my undergrad degrees are in human resource development and sociology. And I wanted to take that a level higher at the management level. And then I ultimately got an internship in hospitality there in Chicago at the Hilton Chicago on Avenue. And so there I began to learn more about the different disciplines of HR, really hands-on and ER relations, employee relations with the executives there. And they really nurtured me into my HR passions, ultimately ending up in talent acquisition, which I love. Because I feel like it has the greatest impact on people's lives.
Yeah, wow. I don't know if I knew that you'd spent time in the Bronx. That's where I was born. We moved when I was still really young, but my folks lived in New York for about 7 years. And while I've not lived in Indiana, I lived in Ohio for about 6 years. So the whole Midwest US sort of a thing. Yeah. It's fun, right? As you build relationships with people and you begin to find multiple ways that there's those connections. It's always part of the delight of new friendships. So as an executive coach, a lot of a lot of times when I'm brought into companies, especially in larger corporate spaces, I enter via human resources. And sometimes the HR business partner is really involved in the work that I'm doing in leadership development, and other times less so. Tell me a little bit about where you've experienced being really successful in your HR role, what helps to set you up, or anyone to be successful in that role, where we know that a lot of times HR has limited authority or limited decision making, and it can be kind of a gatekeeping role or a little boxed role. How have you pushed through that to be effective when you've been in your HR capacity?
Yeah, those are valid points about HR. It certainly does, stand true for certain organizations. I think because I've been in the hospitality realm, you think of hotels, you think of casinos. I'm here in Las Vegas. That's, what we do. And so you think of those places, and as a tourist, you say, oh, this is just a hotel. But as a person working within the organization, they're literally cities within themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different components that are within the business. There's accounting, there's compliance, there's all these different departments that are a traditional business, but also existing within the hotel. And so hospitality, I think, naturally kind of lures in a diverse type of workforce. And so I've been grateful to kind of have that experience, considering the industry. Now, since I've, moved into tech, and I've been into other industries, real estate and banking and so forth, I do understand that there are, challenges existing within. So as far as HR is concerned, I think something that would be advantageous for HR professionals is for HR to have a personality, right? And so, oftentimes HR is either perceived as the principal's office, it's where you go to get discipline, or it's where you go, for your administrative benefits, or, to discuss what's going on with your health plan or your tuition reimbursement. And it's a lot more than that. And so I think that HR professionals can build internal brands of HR, and that would be helpful, right? So that we can express really what the value proposition is for the organization, because HR is so much more than, progressive discipline. It's so much more than, your benefits and your health plans. It's really the backbone of the organization when it comes to hiring, when it comes to staffing, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to employee relations. If you're a union property or you don't have union members, there's so many different elements that come into place, legal elements. And so, having HR professionals present an internal brand that is welcoming for, employees, and actually advocates for their interests, but also, helps the bottom line of the business is super important. So, just kind of moving into a happier space of HR instead of, this administrative function that people, really think you can go with or without, and you can't at all.
Yeah. Well, listening to you say that, it reminds me, my degrees are in social work, and social workers work in so many different sectors. But if I were to, introduce myself as a social worker, people are like, oh, do you work in child welfare? Do you take people's children? Or, oh, do you work in a school? Or, oh, do you work in mental health? And yes, social workers work in all of those spaces, but there's a lot of diversity and professionalism within that umbrella, and it's really easy to get pigeonholed into what we do, and oftentimes that's a negative stereotype of what we do, right?
Yeah.
And while some of it is around stereotyping, in the 10 years that I've been partnering with HR, I don't have the actual statistics, but I can tell you that surely at least 90% of my HR colleagues have been middle-aged white women. So tell me a little bit about why you think HR is so white, and about this potential, well, not potential, about the reality of there being a lot of Karens and Amy Coopers and gatekeeping dangerous women in HR. How did that reputation get earned?
Yes, well, you're right. So, you know, as far as the industry is concerned, it certainly is factual that, you know, over 67% of HR professionals are white women, right? I think that that is reflective of corporate America's culture. And so that's one of the issues that we're having right now, right? It's diversity, it's equity, it's inclusion, it's technology, all of these different areas that are actually assets to changing that dynamic, right? And so when we think about HR, when I mentioned about building that internal brand and having it be welcoming to employee interests, and also, you know, presenting that value proposition for the senior leadership, it's essential that it becomes more diverse so that, you know, you're attracting the top talent that you want. You know, genius comes in all colors, genius comes in all genders. And so being able to have someone in HR who is diverse and has an inclusive attitude naturally will decrease some of the biases that exist, right? Biases in hiring, biases in firing. There's just so many different areas that HR affects within the organization. And that's why I said it's so important to really present what it is that HR does, right? In a more comprehensive fashion with personality, so that people are not afraid of it, and people welcome it, and people are not trying to shut it down because it's all about compliance and policy driven. You know, there's a way to present that is more engaging for the workforce than it has traditionally been. I think right now, with all the digital tools that we have, it's a great opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me, Lauren, of the importance for human beings at work and everywhere, of course, but since we're talking about work, of psychological safety. And if we're gonna have inclusion where there's an element of trust and safety and belonging that goes into that. And if part of HR's function is to be involved in firing, or to be involved in performance improvement plans, or to be involved with underperformers, that's a really significant barrier to try to bridge if folks generally associate an HR function or person as being in that principal's office, then even if I put on my bubbly personality, there's a lot of history to try to build trust through.
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, and so change management needs to happen at all levels within the organization, right? And right now, as a society, we're undergoing that kind of change. And so corporations are now waking up to it, right? We're seeing pledges of anti-racism. We're seeing gender inclusion initiatives. And so I think HR is trying to keep up and evolve with what's happening, of course, because we have to be able to enforce certain things appropriately. But, you know, being able to build that brand is a strong indicator of change, and certainly more inviting than it has been in the past.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about your current role and your business and your life as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so life as an entrepreneur.
It's real.
Yes, it is. So I'm the owner of All In Recruiting and Talent Boutique, and we are a boutique recruitment agency. And so we hire top talented and diverse professionals across the country, specifically for technology fields, not limited to. And so we've got a pipeline of over 10,000 candidates, passive and active. And I always wonder, how did this happen? And I think it's just a natural draw from, being an HR professional for a number of years and having people always reaching out for opportunity. And so we've got a great database of some really talented people all around the country. And so 2,000 of those folks are actually senior level women in technology, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And so technology companies right now are really in search of, diverse and inclusive workforce. And so we present that. We have those women. We've captured them. And so we've actually taken the time to nurture these pipelines, to build relationships with these candidates that are seeking and some that are not seeking. And so we've been successful so far. We've obtained a Fortune 100 client, of course, looking to have much more clients and grow the business even larger. So, my life as an entrepreneur is pretty much laser focused on growing the business, hiring the talent, and really keeping, candidates happy, but also making companies better.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. The laser focus, as a small business owner myself, I know how important that is. And and the struggle, right, for me, because I'm a very visionary kind of a person, and I get bored easily if I was only offering the same products. And so the importance of the laser focus and also the innovation and creativity, that sometimes I focus on doing too many things at once, and to hone in on doing that one thing really well, or really developing the mastery at what you do best, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And you said, how did I get here? I want to hear more about that. I mean, we're taught to be humble, and that's a very important leadership trait. But how do you think your company has been successful? You've got laser focus. What else do you bring as a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I think, from a personal level, the things that really drive me and have brought me to this level would be, faith, right? That has definitely kept me sane during the process of this journey of entrepreneurship and, obtaining clients and just constant learning. So faith, my commitment to schooling, right? And that's traditional schooling from all the degrees, but it's also, a dedication and a commitment to forever learning, right? So I'm very much committed to evolving and being a better person for the people that are around me and that are in association with me. And so that will in turn add value to whether that's my family circle, my friendship circle, my business clients, the candidates that I interact with. If I'm more informed, if I'm laser focused, if I'm sane, then that makes, the dream work. And so faith definitely helps me. The schooling definitely helped. And also the upbringing, right? So I mentioned that I was raised in Bronx, New York. I'm actually born in Gary, Indiana, home of Michael Jackson. And so I've got Michael Jackson, I've got the home of hip hop, and then I've, been schooled in the Midwest, and now I'm living here on the West Coast. So I think that all of these different locations have helped me to understand mindsets of different areas in the country. They've helped me to be relatable to people's challenges, right? To understand what are the issues happening in Kentucky, what's happening in California with the laws, and and how do we help folks hire there? How do we deal with mindsets that need to embrace diversity that traditionally haven't, right? You might find that issue perhaps in Ohio or somewhere like that. And so it really gives me this relatability, this adaptability to be able to empathize with folks and be able to provide solutions and meet the needs. And I think the same is true for your business, right? You're able to do the same and be able to coach people and grow them and evolve them. And so it's a win-win all around.
Yeah. Yes. I've been taking a lot of notes while you've been talking, Lauren, and it does confirm part of why there was a early kinship between the two of us. Absolutely, the success of my business is based on relationship, like period, and the ability to deeply relate to lots of different kinds of people and practice empathy. And that is in fact one of our core values and part of what Radius brings and what I as a coach develop in leaders. I believe that the best leaders are self-aware leaders, and helping to develop emotional intelligence in leadership, that's my zone of genius. That's what separates me from a lot of other coaches that are doing the work, and we all sort of have our own little niche, right? And so the empathy, the relationship, upbringing, of course, plays a lot of importance in the way that I show up in the world. And what you said too about that you're forever learning is that curiosity, which is that there's two traits that to me are present every single time when I work with an effective, successful, awesome leader. And it is the self-awareness, but it is also humility and curiosity. Am I working with someone who has that growth mindset, who knows that there's always more to learn? Because the opposite of that is a level of arrogance. And if you're moving through the world with a level of arrogance, which is different than confidence, then why would you even need a coach? You don't have anything else to learn. So I think that approach and belief that I can always be learning more, I find really attractive in people and certainly in leaders. And I love too, Lauren, that your first answer was faith. And I think that our spiritual lives have been severed by the rules of how we show up at work. And there's already that myth, right? That, you have your personal life and you have your professional life, and somehow those things are different. And then to go even deeper into that we've been taught that we shouldn't talk about religions or politics at work. And we're certainly seeing a change in the latter, and we're seeing a lot of companies that are taking political positions. And we're watching on LinkedIn, for example, that one's values, one's political persuasions, one's belief about social justice in this country is now showing up more profoundly in lots of ways. And what does that look like if our faith and spirituality becomes more integrated at work too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are interesting points that you made. It is funny how, at work it was taboo to talk about politics and spirituality. And now since this pandemic, everyone has seemingly gotten closer spiritually to God, right? You've been at home and you're like, oh Lord, when is this going to be over? And so people have been, becoming more spiritually inclined. And now everyone wants to talk about politics. What are your politics? How does your company work? Am I going to agree with the policies that you set forth because of my political position? So it's totally turned around, right? Mm-hmm. Where now you have companies that are literally saying Black Lives Matter. You literally have companies, Bank of America, pledging $1 billion to communities of color. You've got PayPal now $10,000 grants to minority founders. I mean, the list goes on with these type of corporate pledges that have come out specifically because of these societal issues, right? Anti-racism, it's here, right? And this is something that we didn't talk about before, especially in HR, when it comes to employee relations and how people were let go and how there were certain discriminations and so forth. And now it's like, no, we have to talk about it. We have to resolve it, and we have to figure out how to coach through it. And to make everyone better. So yeah, things have certainly turned around for the better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think too, Lauren, that, part of it's so loaded to talk about faith or spirituality for lots of different reasons in this country. And because a lot of times that aspect of ourself has been the opposite of inclusive, or people have been proselytizing at work, and that can get in the way of, doing our jobs. But I think that for you to say, your faith keeps you grounded, and I certainly have a very active spiritual life, and lots of people define their faith or spiritual life in different kinds of ways. One of the things I learned as a hospice social worker is that I did that work here in Oregon. And Oregon, at least at the time I did this work 10 years ago, had the lowest church attendance of anywhere in the nation. Wow. So people did not have a strong, Sunday practice. But that's not the same as having a spiritual practice. And doing hospice work and talking with people daily about the meaning of life and the purpose of life and what's on the other side of life, my daily work included spiritual aspects of people. And chaplains were part of the hospice team. And it didn't mean that we had to come from the same faith persuasion, but it did mean that if my patients and families were buoyed by singing Amazing Grace or saying the Lord's Prayer or asking, came from a Catholic tradition or a Buddhist tradition or whatever that was, that our job was to honor that. Right. And to recognize that as a strength of our clients. Right. And it's been really interesting to leave deeply spiritually grounded work in hospice to corporate tech work where spirituality is not really talked about in the same way. Right. And yet, when we peel away the tenets of capitalism and of white supremacy and of very deeply oppressive systems, I do find that the white male engineers and scientists that I work with on a daily basis, there is still space to talk about what gets you up in the morning and what keeps you strong when you're working freaking 80-hour weeks, right? Yeah. Like, how have you found ways, Lauren, to, if we want to go here, to incorporating your faith in your professional life and in the work that you do?
Yeah, those are great points. So I would say that it's really creating a culture of mutual respect, right? So in the hospice environment that you worked in, it was, we may not have the same faith beliefs, but I certainly respect what you believe, right? And so the same is true in the workplace. We don't all have the same beliefs. We don't all have the same opinions, but there needs to be a mutual respect, right? So that we're not deliberately discriminating against one culture or another, one religion or another, but we're creating a safe space for each other. When it comes to my spiritual life and my work life, because I'm, the owner of the company, I have the ability to, I don't call it work-life balance, I call it work-life blend, right? Because everything that I do is essentially my business, and everything that I do personally could ultimately affect my business. So it's a work-life blend when it comes to speaking to potential clients. These are things that I pray about, that the business grows. These are things that, that I put on my list to God to make sure that we are ethical, that we have integrity in our processes, and that we're upstanding morally so that we can attract, the law of attraction will bring us the type of clients that we'd like. And so that's kind of how I look at that, as a work-life blend. Right now, it doesn't help me blur too many lines because I don't have children. I don't have a lot of other extra things right now. So it helps me, stay on this focus path. But, I can understand the difficulty when there are other things in life. But yeah, I just, you know, I blended in.
Well, and that integration is, I believe, part of what helps us be congruent in our lives. It's part of integrity. It's part of what I say matching what I do, right? Is if we have this blend and we say, no, there is not work life and personal life. Those are blended. And there is not professional Lori and spiritual Lori. Those are blended. And I think that creates a wholeness in us that is, you know, speaking of the law of attraction, but that attracts other nervous systems, other people to us, because they see the that we're not living disjointed.
Yeah, yeah. It brings much more commonality, you know, to folks, and it is a humbling experience, right? To sit down with people you disagree with and to understand them and to respect them. But it's also one of those areas of learning, you know. It's unfortunate that people, you know, choose ignorance over intelligence, you know, and I think that the route of being more intelligent is understanding other people, understanding people you disagree with, and not always sitting at the table with people who look like you, not always talking to people who look like you or who, you know, think like you think. That's the inclusivity that we need as a society, right? And so that hopefully will permeate into corporate cultures where we do become what we ideally want to be.
Yeah. Okay, truth bomb. Thank you. I'm just going to sit here for a little bit and let that sink in. So you mentioned humility and the continued learning. And as entrepreneurs, we know that part of our success is not that we get it right all the time, but that we fail. And instead of just, you know, beating ourselves up over that, we take those failures, the epic failures and the little mistakes, and we learn from them. What has been a failure that has been a teacher to you as you've grown your business?
Oh, failures. Yeah, they don't tell you about that part, do they? I'm always complaining about that. I'm like, you know, no one told me it was going to be like this. But yeah, so it's definitely a part of the process. It's a part of that growth. You know, there's I guess you can call it a graph or whatever it is. It's some kind of infograph that I like, but it shows you how where growth exists, right? And it's outside of the comfort zone. And
Yes.
So a lot of times, you know, folks start out on a business venture and they're thinking this is going to be successful, you know, go all in. And there are a lot of, you know, setbacks. There are a lot of challenges involved with building a business. One of the hardest lessons that I had to learn early on was, you know, in the beginning, I was the rock star. You know, it's like, yeah, look what I did and look what I got going on. And you soon then learn that, no, it's actually about a team. It's actually about building a rock star team that can help you achieve this goal. And so, you know, early on as an entrepreneur, it was, you know, I'll get the contracts, I'll do the business development, I'll do the marketing, I'll do everything. And then it's like, oh my goodness, I can't do everything, right? I need to bring on some rock star teammates. And so that's what I ended up doing, and it worked very well in our favor. We were able to bring in some very talented women to the Microsoft culture. And so that was with the help of my rock star recruiters. And so a hard lesson was, you know, it's not about you, right? It's not about you. It's about the team. It's about the value add. It's about, you know, the results at the end of the day. Are these people driving performance in companies? Are they making the companies better? Are they happy, right? Are these candidates happy? We don't want to send them to workplace cultures that are horrible where they're not being retained. And so all of those things are considered in our processes. Like I said, you know, we are in the business for other people. And so I don't know if it's my life mission, I guess it is, but that's kind of how it's approached. And that was a hard lesson I had to learn.
Oh, well, and I don't think I would trust anyone who has not had that lesson. It's not all about you. Because you're right. Whenever we're growing a business, it is an extension of who we are, and our identity is really wrapped up in that. And to have the trust that you can hand over portions of the business to other people is certainly been a challenge, to say the least, for most of the leaders that I've worked with. And I would say in a more corporate setting, not in an entrepreneur setting, that almost every senior director that I have worked with whose next role is a VP, it is the learning to delegate part that keeps them as their biggest barrier to moving on to the next thing, where they're doing less of that individual contributor work, and it's really all about building that rockstar team and doing that succession planning. And for leaders who are highly accountable, really responsible, take a lot of pride in their work, are high achieving, have been really successful, to learn to be like, I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust that Lauren can do that, and she won't do it exactly how I do it, but she'll get it done, and heaven forbid, it might even be better than the way that I had done it, right? And that is a major stretch for most of our egos.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard thing to do. Like I said, it was a hard lesson, but once I took on that attitude, it really did work out in my favor. And I find the same to be true for clients, that are HR partners or talent acquisition executives. And they're like, well, we've got an internal team, but we don't, have this particular area figured out. And it's like, well, why don't you bring us in? Let's collaborate on what your initiatives are and understand your challenges, and really take the time to figure out what solutions we can provide. And so being able to be open to a vendor or a partner in doing so is a bit of a stretch for them. But once they do it, it's very rewarding.
Yes. Well, which I've experienced is a natural outcome of good collaboration, is that it's intrinsically rewarding, right? Not only is there a better product or a better outcome, but that the process, while sometimes can be painful in moments where people don't agree with your ideas, but that the end result can be rewarding. How do you think you and your boutique, what sets you up to be strong collaborators? How is that something that your boutique brings that is maybe different than some other recruiting companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think our strong suit is that we're a small boutique organization. And so in comparison to larger agencies where you'll spend, oh gosh, I've heard the bills, and they're very, very high. So they'll spend a lot of money. They will, obtain, the agencies will obtain requisitions, and, you'll hear from them when you hear from them. Or, you'll get candidates and you'll say, well, this is not exactly what I was looking for. Or you'll hire people and you say, well, we need to, not even pursue this person after this 90 days. And so what we really do is we take that time to have that conversation, to really collaborate, to build that relationship, to nurture the relationship, and look for what it is that you are desiring outside of the job description, right? What kind of people fit well with your team as far as how you think, as far as how, performance is driven there? Are you, a merit-based company? Are you looking for top performers? Some people are okay with, individual contributors. Some folks want people that are, used to very large corporate teams. It really has to be an assessment of what it is that they're looking for. And so we take the time to do that. That's the difference between us and larger agencies. And so we have been, very successful in having great relationships and being able to place really great people that they can rave about.
Right, which is a great success outcome, right? Not just that you filled the position, but that the goal is that you filled the position and you're raving about them. I love that as a success metric.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the high standards. And that's the way I feel too. You know, I don't want to just be like, oh, that was good coaching. I want it to be transformational coaching. You know, like it's if we're gonna aim high, let's aim freaking high. And that it's something you feel in your body. It's not just a check the box or, you know, you completed your KPI. It is, I feel deeply awesome about this experience. And because of that, I'm going to return to Lauren when I have another position that's open.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'll think about including that as a metric or perhaps a survey for our clients. Are you raving about this?
Yeah, yes. Well, and it also reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote, that it's not what you did that people remember, but it's about how you make them feel. And I can tell you, Lauren, that you certainly make me feel good. So I'm sure that your clients have a similar experience.
Thank you. Thank you. They do. I'm glad about it. We want more. So let's make everything.
So I want to ask you a really pointed question. Most of my experience has either been in really large billion-dollar semiconductor companies or smaller, nimble, earlier tech startups. And I do some work outside of tech, but my tech work sort of falls in those two camps. And in both the very large 10,000 employee companies and the smaller 100-person startup companies, there's definitely a lot of rhetoric around the pipeline problem. And that, yes, these companies would love to be able to hire racially diverse engineers. And yes, you're right, our C-suite is all white dudes, but we just don't know people of color, or to be truly accurate in tech, there's a much higher representation of Asians and folks from regions of the world that are not, but they're not highly represented by Black and Indigenous and Latinx folks. So for people that say that there's a pipeline problem and that there are not qualified senior leaders to fill these positions, what do you have to say to that, Lauren?
Well, it's just not true, right? And so think about it like this. We live in America. Does America have a diversity problem?
No, it does not.
Right. You look at Chicago, you look at New York, you look at San Francisco. You can look at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. There is no diversity issue. We have people who have immigrated from every country, every culture in the world into our country. And so now we ask ourselves, why does corporate America have a diversity problem, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not that these people don't exist. Perhaps we need to do a better job at connecting them, right? And blending our cultures so that we have a more welcoming environment. And so when it comes to diversity and inclusion in technology, I empathize with those folks that say they have that challenge because, you know, in their minds, it is a real challenge, right? Utah may have that issue where they don't have a very large Black population. Does that mean that Black engineers and Black data scientists and data architects don't exist? Absolutely not, right? And so how do you attract them? How do you build a brand that is welcoming, inclusive, so that they want to bring their genius to your company? And so I empathize with them because I've been to these niche conferences, these technology conferences, where, you know, most recently I went to Afrotech in Oakland, which was amazing. Yeah. Yes. And they had over 10,000 Black professionals there that were in technology. And I kid you not, walking around, everyone was like, whoa, they didn't even know each other existed, right? So it's not just, you know, about leadership saying that there's a pipeline problem, but there's also, pockets of people that are having isolated experiences, island experiences all around the country, whether they're the only woman on the executive team and they're like, oh, I guess this is the way it is, or the only Black person or the only Hispanic in their department, they're thinking, oh my gosh, it's just the way it is. But when they congregate and they say, oh my gosh, we have an ecosystem, we have a community. Yeah. And so being intentional about finding those areas to attract that talent, being intentional about understanding those different communities and what motivates them, and how to bring them to your brand is imperative. And so what we'll find in the future is that companies that don't take that seriously will be outperformed by their competitors. It's just simple as that, right? So if you're not talking about equity, inclusion, diversity, gender parity, then what's happening with your brand? It's going away. It's old, it's traditional, it's trite. And what we're finding is that you've got to be more flexible. You've got to be more inclusive. And that's just the way the future looks for us all, for corporate, for America.
Yeah. It reminds me, Stephen Green, who I introduced you to because he's part of a genius behind this new movement to do more and to do better, lives here in Portland and is an incredible advocate in the Black and Indigenous Latinx community here. And I heard him say one time, because Portland is known as a very white city. It sure as heck doesn't mean that Black people don't live here, but the optics are poor and for very oppressive, terrible reasons. That one of the things that local tech companies have done here historically has been taken this thing called the Tech Pledge, where these companies and CEOs said, yes, we pledge to change the demographics of our company. And even though that pledge was a couple of years old, I don't know all the history of it, shockingly or not shockingly, the numbers and the data did not really change. And I heard Stephen say one time, if you want to deepen your relationship with your grandma because she doesn't live near you and you want to know her better, you don't take a pledge to know your grandma better. You pick up the phone and you call your grandma every week. So this idea of pledging versus action, and we don't need more CEOs or executive directors or school administrators saying, I promise we will make our school more inclusive or our business more inclusive. You freaking do the work. That is how this gets done. And you are part of the way companies do the work. You broker relationships, not in a transactional way, but you bridge folks that are available, who are professional, who can make your company better, and you help that to become a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, like Nike, you just do it, right?
Right.
The pledges are nice to hear, but the call to action is even better to do. And so, right now, society is moving so fast. We are rapidly evolving, or some people say devolving, however you want to look at it. But, companies have to keep up. And so, the demographic of this country is evolving. And so the leadership of these organizations must also evolve. And so, that's how you drive performance. Studies have shown that diversity is good for your bottom line, right? Yeah. And so, Harvard, you name all the top Ivy League schools and they will tell you the same thing. And so it's just a matter of opening, these minds, having them to take action on new found perspectives, and really just doing the work. And so companies like mine and companies like yours are able to be strategically positioned to help them to do that, to do the work, right? So we will bring in top talented people to your organizations based upon your needs, right? And you will coach them and develop leaders at all levels. And so it's a win-win within the organization. It doesn't mean that, we're doing away with white men forever. That's not what it means. But what it means is that we're going to have a fair America, and we're going to make sure that, you know, people are treated fairly and people are respected. And so if companies are not, you know, if they're not cultivating that type of culture, then they will find, you know, major issues. There are so many companies right now that have been around for generations that have gone away because they couldn't keep up with technology. They couldn't keep up with new trends, right? And so this is not a trend, right, to be diverse and inclusive. This is how America is set up to be ideally. And so we're all working toward the same goal. And now, you know, just like Steven mentioned, it's time to just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could spend many more hours here with you, Lauren. I want to end with sort of the magic wand question. If the good work that you are doing continues, and if the momentum around equity and inclusion at work and the momentum around ending police brutality and creating a more anti-racist America, all of the action that we're experiencing right now in the promises and pledges, if we have a magic wand and we see the America that we want 5 years from now, because change, well, I mean, change takes a while, less so if you have a magic wand, but what would showing up to work in your average tech company, what do you think that could look or feel like 5 years from now if this kind of momentum and progress continues?
Oh, wow. It would be beautiful. It would be beautiful to see. I think that we would be a lot more progressive in our technology because there's so much more diversity of thought. I think we would be more empathetic as a society because we would be, you know, cultivating this mutual respect. I definitely think that our technology would have less bias. You know, there's some issues right now within the robotics field with engineers and some of the algorithms that are being created that are discriminatory against skin tones, right? So when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, when we're talking about, you know, police software that they use, all of these different technological advances are being created by people. And so in order for us to have a fair America, and not run into, you know, the same issues that we're having now with the human police, right? We also don't want to have that issue with the robotic police that will come. So you know, having folks that are diverse engineers, diverse scientists have a say-so at that table will then eliminate some of those issues that could happen in the future. And so it's imperative that we do it now. It's imperative that companies, you know, take heed to what's happening and stay on trend with, you know, what's happening in 2050, and definitely include those folks, those 10,000 folks that I saw at Afrotech. You know, those people that I see, I don't know what the conference is now, but the Nishimba, the Hispanic MBA conferences, you know, the Asian conferences, and, you know, all of the different women-led organizations. You know, it's very important that we're all feeling included, and that we all feel that we have a fair opportunity, you know, when it comes to veterans as well, or even when it comes to second chance citizens, right? There's a whole new group of people that are going to be welcomed back into society that are not ignorant people. Some of them have been geniuses, right? We've seen people writing books that are, you know, just profound, being used in universities that have come out of prison. So we've got to rethink what talent looks like. We've got to rethink what genius is. It's not an exclusive trait for one particular ethnicity. Genius can be found in every area. And so we are passionate about finding geniuses so that we can affect change. And I know that you are as well.
Absolutely, Lauren. And I mean, how perfect to end the segment that the reason I created Radius Cafe is to riff on Brian Eno's idea that the myth of the lone genius is just that it is not just, you know, these single folks that are out there with their brilliant ideas, but that it is collectively the genius that is created when two or more people get together and we cultivate and create new ideas, which is exactly what has happened today. And it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Lori. This has been so fun, and I'll talk to you anytime.
Yeah. Awesome. Have a blessed week, Lauren.
Likewise, you as well. Thank you.